Welcome everybody to the season finale of the Dine and Learn for summer 2024. Today's August 26th. Tonight's shir is sponsored by the Newman and Fuchsman families as a chutz for Refuah Shlema for Rafal Avram Nisano ben Mashaliba. If you'll know, Rabbi Zucker in our neighborhood, he needs a Refuah Shlema. We're all davening for him. I also just want to mention that Ephraim Meiri is making Aliyah this week, and we all wish him a safe Cham L'Shalom. So we've been learning this summer, at least when I've been here, there's been a handoff between different people. So first of all, yishkarach to everybody who came either tonight or some of the nights or all the nights. I didn't come all the nights. And Rabbi Mendelson, who gave some of them, I gave some of them, and I think, was it Elimelech Price gave one of them?
Yeah.
So it's been a very interesting summer, I hope, for everybody. We've been talking, or at least I've been talking about the halachos related to soldiers in a war, because as we all know, sometimes we can forget, we get fatigue. But there's people still putting their lives in danger in a war. My mother just said this weekend, she's at Tel Aviv, she heard 100 airplanes flying over them as they went to attack Lebanon. My father slept through the whole thing, but my mother heard them come. There's literally a war going on, and the people we know are part of it. So this is our little way of being of participating, being mishtatev. So I thought we could talk about two sugyas tonight. One is fighting a war on Shabbos. So if it asks you, are you allowed to fight a war on Shabbos? You would say, of course. Pikuach Nefesh, of course. We had the Yom Kippur War 50 years ago. Then the war on Simchas Torah last year, ongoing. Of course you find on Shabbos. So that's why there's such a Peladik Zach there's something called the Book of Maccabees. Not in our Tanakh, but we call it in Hebrew Sefer Chashmonaim or Sefer Maccabim. Maccabim, by the way, with a kuf. Sefer Maccabim. And they tell the story of the Chashmonaim. It was transmitted throughout the generations in Greek, but we take it seriously. We don't know who wrote it. It seems to be written at that time. To the best, I'm not an expert, but the tale of story. You can look it up online. I looked it up online. In the first book, in the second chapter, in verses 31 to 41, tells the story of the first attack of Jews by the Syrian Greeks. The Jews left because there were the Gezeras going on, so they left the cities and they went to the caves, just to get away from all the Rishayim. And the soldiers came to them, and they came to them on Shabbos, and the people first they said, do a avodah zarah or whatever they needed to do, and they said no, and they said, okay, we're going to kill you. And the people, because it was Shabbos, refused to fight back, and so they killed 1,000 people there. And after that, Matisyahu and his Beis Din said, well, from now on, we have to fight on Shabbos. What was the Havamina and what was the Maskana? What were they thinking? Why wouldn't they fight on Shabbos? So there are people, this was originally brought to people's attention, because there are people saying, see, the Torah Shabbal Peh is something new that they made up throughout the generations. Now, that's not true, and this is not a proof. At most, it's a proof that there was one particular din, which Matisyahu darshan from a pasuk. A Sanhedrin is allowed to darshan from a pasuk. It's not clear to say this. It's not clear to say that before that they didn't fight on Shabbos, and after that they did fight on Shabbos. But it's very strange. It's very strange. 1959.
We don't have any rights from the times of the wars when they went into Canaan.
Give me 2 minutes, and you'll hear it. Just there are rights. So I have a sefer here, Milchamos Shabbos. It was published in 1959, small book, by Rav Moshe Tzvi Neriyah. Rav Moshe Tzvi Neriyah was one of the Talmidim of Rav Kook. He started and was the Rosh Yeshiva of the Bnei Akiva system of schools throughout Israel. Bnei Akiva was not just youth movement, it was also elementary schools, maybe high schools, I'm not sure. And he founded it, was Rosh Yeshiva, and he published his sefer. First part is just going through the sugya of fighting on Shabbos, the Bavli, Rishalmi. He talks through the whole thing. And in the back, he talks through some of the Rishonim, some of the ancient texts. And he talks about this particular passage in Sefer Maccabim, Sefer Chashmonaim. And he asks, why didn't they fight? And to say that before that point in time, there was no heter pikuach nefesh to fight on Shabbos, he has three kashas. First of all, it doesn't make sense. Someone's deathly ill on Shabbos, and you're not even allowed to light a fire to warm them up, to save their life. It doesn't make sense that this is just is contrary to our understanding of Yiddishkeit, that we should just stand around and let people die when there's something we could do. That's number one. And number two, he said, there are wars in Tanakh, and at no point, our enemies were not stupid. And these wars took a long time. Why didn't every war take exactly 1 week or 2 weeks? Comes Shabbos, we put down our weapons and we go to say Kabbalah Shabbos, and we daven and we learn, and we have our sudas. The soldiers say, wait a minute, they're not fighting back? Okay, so maybe it takes them a whole day to figure it out. But come next Shabbos, they're just marching straight through. Why did these... Asar B'Tevis is when they started the siege around Yerushalayim. Over a year later, maybe a year and a half later, was Tisha B'Av, when they destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. Why did it take them a year and a half? Why didn't it take them 2 weeks? Number three, why? Okay, fine. So let's say Matisyahu came up with a chiddush, you're allowed to fight on Shabbos. Why don't Chazal mention it? Why isn't it in the Gemara? The Gemara in Yoma Pehei that discusses, and they ask, Minayin, Pikuach Nevesh, Dochas HaTorah. How do we know, from where do we know that Pikuach Nevesh is Dochas Shabbos? From where do we know that? And so there are different suggestions given, which boil down basically to either V'chai Behem, V'lo Shiyamos Behem, you're supposed to live by the mitzvos, or either Chalel Olov Shabbos Achas, K'tei Shishmor Shabbosos Harbe. Okay, violate one Shabbos for the sake of many Shabbosos for the rest of his life. So either way, they're talking about it. And they don't ask, Minayin Lamatisyahu, or, where did Matisyahu get it from? That should have been what they asked. They had access to Sefer Chashmonim, the Sefer Book of Maccabees, they had access to it. So it says in Moshe Tzvi area, that isn't pshat. It isn't pshat that they thought it was, the Havamina was, it's also to fight on Shabbos, and the Maskana was, no, it's mutter. Rather, he quotes from the Doros HaRishonim. Doros HaRishonim is a history book by Rav Yitzchak Isaac Halevi Rabinowitz, who was an Eloi, big Eloi in Europe. And he said, look at the actual parak, the actual chapters in the Book of Maccabees. What's going on? These are a bunch of civilians, a bunch of people, a bunch of from families saying, we're not going to violate the Torah. They ran to hid, and they hid in the caves. The army comes and starts fighting with them. Well, they're not soldiers. These are just a bunch of Jewish families. The Havamina was, we're not soldiers. We don't know how to fight. And the chiddush was, Matisyahu, it's not that we're going to fight on Shabbos. The chiddush was, we're going to fight. He's the one who said, okay, let's organize, let's train, let's become an army. The whole chiddush was not that we're going to fight on Shabbos, is that we're going to have an army that's going to fight back. We're not just going to be a bunch of civilians who run, we're actually going to take a stand.
There's no bezin that Paskin shot, and nothing, basically
He sat down with the leaders and said, I mean, you can't just start a war on your own. If you want to build an army, you got to... So he conferred with his colleagues, and they said, time for war. There's a time for peace, this is a time for war. Swamp shot. One approach, one mahalach. Shlomo Goren, who was the first chief rabbi of the IDF, and later chief rabbi of Israel, so he was known as a rambunctious Eloi as a young man, full of chidushim. He has another mahalach on this. He also, I believe, he has a college degree from Hebrew University in philosophy, and he read Greek and read Latin, and he has a totally different approach to this. He said, of course, in previous wars, the Jews defended them on Shabbos. It doesn't make sense. Pikuach nefesh dochas Shabbos, that's an ancient halacha. If not in Lamoshe Misinai, it's probably Misinai. If not, it was the early drasha, because otherwise there would be no Jewish people today. But this war was different. What does it say in Megillas Tanis? I'll read it for you. Gadru Malchei Yovan, right? So the Greek kings, Al Yisrael, they decreed Shelo Yasku b'Torah. Number one, we weren't allowed to learn Torah. V'Shelo Yomulu as b'neim, we're not allowed to do bris milah. V'Shelo Yishmeru as the Shabbos, we're not allowed to keep Shabbos. V'Sheyavdu le'olilim, and we have to do avodah zarah. So it says Shlomo Goren, they intentionally attacked us on Shabbos because they didn't want us to be Shomer Shabbos. This was part of the Gzeira. They were intentionally trying to provoke us to do malachas on Shabbos. And the general din is, yes, Pikuach Nefesh is all the mitzvahs of the Torah except for the three big ones. However, there's an exception, Shas Hashmaz, Shas Gzeira, when there's a decree that we have to violate even a minor mitzvah. If that's the decree, they're trying to force us to violate that Isser, so then we have to, the Ziharag Val Yavor. So the Havamina was, they're trying to get us to fight on Shabbos, to do a malach on Shabbos, and therefore it's considered Shas Hashmad, and it's Yehor Gval Yavor. And that's a good cheshbon. That's a very good cheshbon. They dafka attacked us on Shabbos because they wanted us to violate Shabbos, and therefore it should have been Yehor Gval Yavor. Matisyo's chiddush was that could mean the end of Klal Yisrael. In order to save all of Klal Yisrael, then we have to fight back. So his chiddush was not you're allowed to fight on Shabbos, Pikuach Nefesh Shabbos. That was for sure the halacha. His chiddush was even when they're trying to get us to violate Shabbos, when we normally should be Yehor Gval Yavor, in order to save all of Klal Yisrael, then we fight back. In the past 50 years, we've seen at least twice, that our enemies have dafka tried to get us to violate the Yom Tovim. First Yom Kippur, then Simchas Torah, and there have been all sorts of other times when things happen on Shabbos. It's the same strategy as the Yavanim. Literally the same strategy as the Yavanim. They tried, but we have this Masorah from Matisyo that we fight back. We don't give in and let them just march through and take us captive on Yom Kippur, on Simchas Torah, on Shabbos, anytime, because of this Masorah that we have from Matisyo. Okay, Adkan on Shabbos. I'll tell you a story. Must have been in November, December. So there was a soldier who was killed in Gaza, and Rabbi Rekeach from down the road. So he has one of his sons lives in Eretz Yisrael. At least one of his children lives in Eretz Yisrael. Went to pay shiva call to the almana, young couple, and he asked the almana, "What can we do for you?" And she said, my husband, he was Ben Torah, he learned in yeshiva. The last conversation we had was he said he really wants to chazer Yevamos. Could I send him his Gemara in Yevamos? And I was ready to send it to him, but he wasn't alive. He never got the Gemara in Yevamos. So could your shul, please learn Yevamos in his memory? So they divided it up. I got a few blot. Everybody got a few blot. We finished Yevamos in time for the Shloshim, and they made us see him. And it was at night because we're all balabat and we all work. So we made us see him at night, and her father, the father-in-law of the fallen soldier, he joined via Zoom in the middle of the night. He gave a very nice speech, very nice Dvar Torah, and I was blown away by something that he said. He said, in 2 months, my daughter is going to have to do chalitza. Because the way it works is they didn't have any children, right? So if a couple doesn't have any children, the husband dies, so the wife either does yibum or chalitza. We don't do yibum nowadays, she has to do chalitza. And you wait 3 months to make sure she's not pregnant. It was a pella. I can't believe we're doing this. We're doing chalitza on a soldier. It's against the Gemara. The Gemara twice, Shabbos and in Ksubas, says that the soldiers of David would give a get to their wives before they went out to war for just these kinds of situations. The husband gets lost. You don't want her to be trapped as an aguna. And if they don't have children, you don't want her to have to do yibum or chalitza. You don't know what's going on with the brother. So this woman, so her brother-in-law, or the dead soldier's brothers were willing to do chalitza. Not everybody's willing to do that. And sometimes the only brother is all the way across the world and might not be available. That's why they gave a get to the soldiers. The soldiers gave a get to their wives. So Machlokas is showing him exactly what they gave. Rashi and Tosfos seems to say that they gave a get al t'nai, on condition. They gave a get on condition either that I died or that I won't return. Then this get is chal. Rabbeinu Tam says no, they just gave a get. Stam, a get. They gave a get. When they came back, they got remarried. What? Oh, so it doesn't work for a Kohen. That's the drawback is it doesn't work for a Kohen. A Kohen cannot give an absolute get because then he's not allowed to remarry. She's divorced and you're not allowed to marry a divorced lady.
Even joined the war.
That was last week or 2 weeks. Well, I think it was last week. I'll send. It's on the YouTube. Ask your father for the discussion that we had. It's a big machlokas.
I forgot what the end was.
Oh, the end was Kohanim do go out to war. And there's the Balaturim. There's a Balaturim in Parshas Matos. Actually says Moshe Rabbeinu enacted that soldiers should give a get to their wives. It goes all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu according to the Balaturim. So if it's right, so like he was saying, if it's a regular Jew, so you give either an actual get or a get al t'nai, that works. A Kohen can only give a get al t'nai. Only give a get al t'nai. So if a Kohen is recently married and has no children, or however long they're married, if they have no children, So then they're a little stuck. Because a get al t'nai will not save the wife from having to do chalitza. A get al t'nai only works if he doesn't come back, we don't know where he is. So then miman shach. If he was killed, so she's allowed to remarry. If he was not killed, so then the get is chal. If he's kept captive for 10, 15, 20 years, we don't know how long. If he's missing, we don't know what happened to him, so then she's allowed to remarry.
Let's say the hostages. What are they doing that kind of?
Hold on. We'll get there. Just don't leave early, and we'll get there. And this was done. We know for sure it was done. Rav Shlomo Yosef Zevin in his Or Halacha had a whole chapter on the subject. But we have chuvas from the late 1800s, the early 1900s, that this actually happened. There's a case of the Netziv. The Netziv discussed this case. A Russian soldier gave his wife a get al t'nai. If I don't come back in 2 years to our home, this get will be chal. So he survived the war, and the war was over, but the Russian army wouldn't let him go home. They said, we need you in Moscow. And they sent him to Moscow, and they would not let him leave, even for a day. They would not let him leave. And it was almost 2 years. He was a Kohen.
Couldn't you get word out saying I'm alive or anything like that?
But he did get word out that he was alive, but the t'nai was returning. So they asked Shabbos, what do we do? It's almost 2 years. He's a Kohen. Once the get is chal, he can't. The couple's got the marriage is over for good. Let's see if tell us about it. There is such a halacha. Let's say I take a neder that I will pay you $100. Whoever, if I would take such a neder, I'd pay you $100. And then you said, when the time comes, you say, you know what? Don't worry about it. I'm mochel. So mochel is ki'ilu hiskabalti. If you say mochel, it's as if I received it. So I don't have you. It's as if you already received it. When you're mochel, you say it's as if you received it. I don't have to pay you. So he says the machlokas rishonim whether that would also apply to a get, to the t'nai to a get. If the wife is mochel the t'nai, as if he returned, and therefore the get is batel. So it's as if the t'nai is miskayim. So it says that Netziv, I don't like this, but this is a shas chak, so he was makel for that. But, what? There's ain't onus begitin. There's yesh onus. I don't know what the psak is. I know it's machlokas. I don't know what the psak is. L'chor not. I don't think we ain't onus begitin. I don't remember. At the Divrei Malkiel, so in the Russo-Japanese War in 1904, we have a few chuvas on the subject. The Divrei Malkiel was asked this question because in the Russo-Japanese War, the Russian soldiers were sent out very quickly. They didn't have time to arrange anything, so the getting weren't given. So they had no time to do that. So the Divrei Malkiel came up with a few kulas. The soldier can declare in front of 2 witnesses that he appoints a sofer and 2 witnesses to write, sign, and give a divorce to his wife. So as long as he does that in front of 2 witnesses, so if he doesn't return after the war, so they give the get. If he's dead, so then okay, he's dead. Unfortunately, sadly, but the marriage is over. But if he's alive, so she's released and she's allowed to go on with her life. She's not kept as an aguna forever. But says the Divrei Malkiel that doesn't work if they have no children, because then you have yibum and chalitza. So wild case of Yehuda Leib Cyrilson, who was a big posek in Galicia, a man who did nothing and was sent to war. Whatever, okay. He had other things on his mind. He didn't give any get or anything like that. But then once he got there, he started worrying about chalitza. But he's in a place where there's no Jewish community. You can't go to the local rav and take care of it. There's no local rav. So the Rabbi Yehuda Leib Cyrilson, so he wrote a form and sent it to him and said, sign this form and in your handwriting and send it to the rabbi of your town and get 2 witnesses who recognize your handwriting. If you could get 2 Jewish soldiers to sign as witnesses, even better. If not, make sure that they can find 2 people who recognize your handwriting, and in that appoint, a sofer and two witnesses to write, sign, and give the get, and that would work. And I'm mentioning this because this leads to a huge chiddush in World War II. So during World War II,
what did he have to do in the case of the chalitza there? He's not there. So he had to fill out a form for chalitza also?
No. So he filled out a form to give the get,
Right.
and they give the get immediately. As long as he's not a Kohen, that's fine. He comes back and he gives her, she gets a new ring. Everybody wins. She gets a new ring. Lo aleinu, we don't want these things, but in a time of war, so bad things happen, and we want to make sure that everybody's taken care of. He could have been in a ship that goes down in sea, and then what happens? It's very hard to be matir naguna in a lot of cases.
A lot of back and forth on 9/11, as a matter of fact, when the buildings collapsed.
So 9/11, there was really only one shiloh that was very hard. I used to work for the guy's father. He used to be my boss. Rosenberg. No, Beagle-Eisen was fairly straightforward. But they were able to matter the whole story on how they were matter. It turns out Rabbi Danny Rapp was giving a shiur, and someone who was at the shiur had access to the MTA's records and could figure out which subway he was on, and it was okay. Anyway, not for now. So during World War II, Israelis, it was Palestine, British Palestine. So many Israelis signed up into the British Army to serve in the Middle East, fighting against the Nazis. So Rav Herzog, what he did for them was he printed cards, a harsha, meaning an appointment card, for soldiers. And all they had to do was sign it. And in the card it says, I appoint anyone who is kosher in Yerushalayim to be the sofer, to be the witnesses, to write, sign, and deliver a get to my wife. And on condition that he doesn't, at least 1 year after the enemy releases the prisoners of war, right? In a normal case, in a normal war, eventually it's over, and then there's an exchange of prisoners of war, and if at least 1 year after that he is still missing, and the chief rabbi declares him missing, so in that case they would give the get. But the chiddush here is that they had cards to make it very easy. Sign the card, give it to the rabbi, very easy. But there was another issue. There's a really, really strong problem, and that's in modern wars, soldiers are allowed to go home sometimes. They get leave when they go home. So if you assign a shaliach to give a get to your wife, it's a beferish in Shulchan Aruch, and then you go home and you have relations with her, so that's mevatel l'shlichus. So it's all done. Doesn't matter who you appointed or whatever. Once you go home for weekend leave, it's all over. You have to start over again. So Rav Herzog said, okay, so here's a card. Every time you leave, you go home for leave, good. Every time once you're going back to fight, sign it again, give it to the local rabbi, and you're done. And good. And that's what they did. That's what the soldiers did. And the Israelis, the Jewish soldiers in the British Army in in Israel, Palestine, in World War II, that's what they did. Later, Rav Herzog added language to the harsha to make it even easier, saying, and this is published in his Heichal Yitzchak, his Tshuvas, saying that if I return home, I'm not mevatel l'shlichus. So that's one way to handle it. It's probably a little controversial, but it makes it easier on the soldiers. In London, late 1939, so Jews were in the British Army in London, in England. And the London Bezdin, at that time, the head of the London Bezdin was Rabbi Chizkiah Abramsky, was a Gaon Atzum. He's the one who brought the London Bezdin to its fame as a really very powerful halachic force. So the London Bezdin published a kuntras, a booklet, by Rav Chizkiah Abramsky because there was a problem. The Jewish soldiers were refusing to give gittin to their wives before they went out to fight in World War II. So Rav Chizkiah Abramsky, first of all, said in the kuntras, you have to do it. It's an ancient Jewish tradition. We fulfill our Jewish traditions. It's an obligation. But he came up with a few kulas. He also came up with a card that you could sign. You point 2 sofrim, and that's it. The 2 sofrim, and the card says, if I don't return home in 5 years, give the get. And he said, what about if he comes home for leave? Even in the British Army, they let people come home. So it said, Chizkiah Abramsky a chiddush. Why is it a problem if a couple live together after the husband appoints a shaliach to leave again, and then they live together? Why is it a problem? Because the assumption is that when they live together, he wants to stay with her. He doesn't want to divorce her, and if he doesn't want to divorce her, that means he's mevatel the shalichus. Now, as it happens to be with people, sometimes it's just a moment of passion, and then they each open their mouths and they start another fight, and then, he does want to divorce her. It turns out, but in that moment of passion, he moves mevatel the shlichus. Says Rabbi Chazkel Bramfi, but our case is completely different. Even in that moment of passion, they still want the shlichus because just to protect the wife in case Nebuch, something happens during the war. He knows he's going out to fight again, and he wants to protect his wife. So there's no moment. The moment of passion doesn't affect anything, and it's not mevatel the shlichus. He doesn't have to do anything as long as he signs the harshah once. It's good.
So if there's a child coming out of that, though, it's not an issue of mamzeres, but it could be an issue of out of wedlock, as it were.
Or no, there's if you notice an einov lagarsho.
Right.
If you intend to divorce your wife, you're not allowed to have relations with her, and if you do, any child, some sort of spiritual, something assigned to that child, but not a mamzer, but you have to assume it doesn't apply here because they still love each other. It's still a loving relationship, just difficult circumstances. So there was, even up to World War II, this was a common practice, was to give a get al t'nai in some way or appoint shaliach. But you see, there was increasing resistance. People didn't want to do it. So during Israel's independence war, the two chief rabbis, Rav Yitzchak Herzog, the Ashkenazi chief rabbi, and Rav Ben Zion Meir Chai Uziel, so we know they were encouraging soldiers to sign harshah cards. They had a harshah. All you had to do was sign the card, and that was it. We actually know for sure Rav Uziel met with Ben Gurion to try to convince him to pass a law requiring soldiers to give a get or sign a harshah before they go out to war. Never happened. So I have here the Sefer Zikaron for Rav Herzog. Sorry?
That'd be an issue of the force cap?
That's exactly what I'm about to say. Hold on. So, and this is the Sefer Zikaron for Rav Herzog, it was the chief rabbis we just mentioned. In here, they publish a tshuva from Rav Shlomo Garin. After the Independence War was over, so Rav Herzog was burdened with many responsibilities, including the agunos from the Holocaust. So he asked Rav Shlomo Garin to look into the agunos from the Independence War. And that tshuva is published here of Rav Goren telling how he did it. He went to Har Etzion, and so it was Arab-controlled territory. So he reached out to a sheikh and said, I'm a Jewish sheikh, and this is the religious purposes. Can you please let me come in and talk to people? And he got permission. And he was taken around by a sheikh, and he interviewed all the people who witnessed the attacks and the fighting. And then, of course, on the Israel side, he interviewed the people there. And he figured out he was matir the gunas whenever he could. But the introduction that he says here is that he starts off saying, people should be giving gittin. We shouldn't have these problems. And he says, but we've tried. And we made the rule in the IDF. We made the rule in the IDF that they have to give gittin. But some commanders don't care, so they don't force their soldiers to do it. And some commanders do care, and they force soldiers to do it. And like you said, that's the problem. You're forcing a soldier to give a get. That's a get me'usa. It's a coerced get. Now, maybe you could tie it. It's not really coerced, but it adds more problems to it. And so when Rav Herzog published this in his Heichal Yitzchak, that tshuva, he adds his own introduction, saying, we've tried. We've done everything we can. We made it so easy for the soldiers. We've gone to army bases and begged them, please give a get al tonight. Just sign this card. Protect your wife. In case lo aleinu, one of the soldiers goes missing and we don't know where he is. It's a protection for wives. That's what rabbis are supposed to do. We're supposed to protect the vulnerable wives of Khilah Yisrael. That's what the Rabbanim are supposed to do. But the soldiers don't care, and they aren't willing to do it. I shouldn't say they don't care, but they aren't willing to do it. And Rav Herzog threw up his hands. He said, "We can't do it. We've done all we can. There's nothing more we can do."
Scared of they're not gonna happen.
I'm sorry?
Are they scared of they're not gonna happen?
Supposedly, it affects morale. It affects morale. If you give a get to your wife, it's very emotional. They try to make it easy. Just sign the card. Sign the card. This is in the worst case scenario. Everybody's doing it. It's just a process. People wear dog tags. Why are you wearing a dog tag? So your body can be identified. In Lo Aleinu, the worst cases. So you're wearing a dog tag. Sign this card also. They sign all sorts of paperwork. Sign this as well. But it was not. They did not succeed. But they kept trying. The rabbis kept trying. They don't try anymore. And when did this change? So in 1953, Eliezer Waldenberg, the Sitz Eliezer, published a book, the second volume of his Hilchos Medina, which he talked about soldiers in war. And he brings down the whole sugya, and he brings down the exact language of the card, according to the Rabbanut, the exact language of the card, according to Rav Yechezkel Abramsky, and the exact what you should do according to the Chazon Ish, who had his own approach. He thought it should be done. Sitz Eliezer thought it should be done, but it's not done. So apparently the turning point was in 1956 Sinai campaign. The soldiers just said, we're not doing it. We're done. We're done. And so I've checked online. It's very hard. The IDF has their own rabbinate, and you can ask for the forms and have it done today through online or through talking to one of but they discourage it. They actively discourage it. So what changed? Why did it change? So I don't know. I don't know what happened. I don't know why. I don't know why the Rabbanim are not trying to help the wives of Klal Yisrael, but we could offer two recent comments by poskim on the subject. Rav Yaakov Ariel is one of the big religious Zionist poskim, the retired Rav of Ramat Gan. He has 6 volumes of Tshuvas, many others farm. I have all 6 volumes of Tshuvas, they're amazing. So in 2008, there was a discussion of they're trying to get bodies of soldiers that were captured by the terrorists. And they were going to release prisoners from Israeli prisons in order as an exchange deal for the bodies. And one of the considerations was we don't have proof of death, and there's an aguna. Just wait. There's a wife who's an aguna, can't remarry, she can't go out and move on with her life. I mean, we know he's dead, but we don't have halachic proof of it. So so that's one of the considerations. And Rav Yaakov Ariel,
she would get married. Let's say she knew for a fact, but not from halacha, that
the kids would be mamzerim. The kids would be mamzerim.
Where's dead? The husband's dead.
It has to be proven. It has to be proven. Pi halacha, you need a heter. You need a heter to remarry. It's a big deal. A big deal. So Rav Yaakov Ariel said, we shouldn't be in this situation. They should be given out get al t'nai, all the soldiers. Nowadays, it's not like it was in 1956. Now we have soldiers who learn in yeshiva, who go there, they're heads to yeshivas. There are these institutes that prepare religious soldiers before these machons, mechinas, and these are soldiers who are willing to do what the Rabbanim tell them. We should be telling them, give a get al t'nai. We don't want to have to put other people in danger. You release a terrorist from jail, you're putting everyone in the country in danger. We don't want to be put in that situation. Just give a get al t'nai, and at least we can remove that consideration off the table.
Worst case, he could just remarry if he comes back afterwards. If he didn't get remarried, right?
No. If she remarries without proof, without a heter from a rav, even with heter from a rav, without a get from a husband, thinking he's dead, and then he comes back, she can't go to the old husband, and she can't be with the new husband. She's not allowed to be with either of them. It's a terrible. That's why Rabbanim are so scared to be mater and aguna. You don't want to put people in these horrible situations. On the other hand, Rav Asher Weiss has a remarkable tshuva. In the Second Lebanon War, that was 2006, I think? Something like that. Israel agreed to a ceasefire with Lebanon, and that would take effect in 48 hours. In those 48 hours, there's a special operations. There was a special operation because special commandos had an operation in Lebanon, and they didn't know if they were going to come back. They had to go deep in, get something done. One soldier, about a half hour before they were scheduled to leave, called up his rabbi and said, "I don't know if I'm coming back. Give a get to my wife." I don't know if it was going or not. I don't remember. The question was, this Rav asked Rav Asher Weiss after the fact. He said, "Okay, I got a sofer on the phone. He appointed a sofer. He appointed witnesses. And I don't know. It doesn't say whether he survived. I was wondering the same thing.
Anybody died in that mission?
I don't know. No, that information was not given. Even though the tshuva was published years later. So the rabbi did. He gave the get, and then he asked Rav Asher Weiss, "Did I do the right thing?" And Rav Asher Weiss published his tshuva on that in Chilah Beis of Shut Minchas Asher. It's Siman Sadi Vav. And he said, first of all, so putting aside that whole situation, the rabbi also asked, why don't we just prevent this by giving a get al t'nai before they go out to war? Especially a commando, special operations, is going to be in so much danger. You should give a get al t'nai. So Rav Asher Weiss says, no. there's no need for a get al tanai. The wars today, war has changed, technology has changed. It's a completely different time. In the old days, you'd have hundreds of thousands of soldiers go out. Nobody knows, it's very unclear what happens to them, and thousands never come back. Maybe tens of thousands don't come back. Who's dead, who's not dead? So they have dog tags, and they try to keep track. The paper trail is very hard to keep track, and it was literally hundreds of thousands of people were affected. Nowadays, war is much different. It's not as many people. We have technology. We can keep track of who's where, and we have whole bureaucracies, HR, human resources. So the army has human resources officers keeping track of all the soldiers. So it's really only a handful of people ever that this applies to, who go missing, who are captured. And especially when you're dealing with civilized countries, there's a war, but there's international law, humanitarian law, and they have to treat the captive soldiers, they have to keep track of who's where and treat them in humanitarian circumstances. And they're terrorists. But how many people are affected by that? He said it's a handful, two dozen are affected by this, and you don't make a takana for Klal Yisrael for the sake of a few yechidim. So he said he's against soldiers today giving a get, even al t'nai, before they go out to war. And you could argue with some of his logic. It's not for. I'm sorry.
He said even that special forces team that was going into Lebanon, where
No, in that case, he was okay with it. But
with having that whole team giving a get out tonight before they leave, or
I believe he would have been. That particular phone call. He was very concerned with appointing the scribe, the sofer, and the adim, and doing it in the proper way. It's not so clear whether it was done the proper way or not. There was further conversation about that. But in general, he doesn't believe soldiers in general should be giving a get, even al t'nai, or a get at all, because it's not a takana for all the soldiers anymore. It's really only a takana for a handful. And you could argue, but everyone is put in that position. Only a few actually fall, are actually taken captive. But everybody is a potential, and therefore there are ways. Back and forth. My only point is, you have some poskim who are calling for this to be reinstituted, and some poskim who are against reinstituting it. And the Baruch Hashem, this doesn't fall on our shoulders, and we don't have to. We, at least in this room, personally don't have to experience all these challenges. But we do know that our friends, children, are in these situations even now, today, as I'm speaking right now, and we daven for them, we say Tehillim for them, and we hope that this should all be over soon, and there should be no more war, and Mashiach should come soon.
Amen.